Bitcoin, blockchain, cryptocurrency, mining. Do you have no idea what these words mean? Do you feel like all the smart people are playing some big crazy video game and you have no idea what the rules are? Do you want to know what all the fuss is about? And this video is for you. This is the Modern Magician's cryptocurrency crash course. Hey friends, welcome to the Modern Magician, an Anthromancer series. My name's Daniel James Drake, and in this video, I'm gonna bring you up to speed on crypto in normal people terms. Before we begin, do me a favor, like the video, subscribe to the channel, and if you really feel like it, check out patreon.com/anthromancy. The support means a lot to me and helps me make future content better. Disclaimer, I am not a financial advisor, and this video should not be taken as financial advice. I am a fool. If you get turbo wrecked because of this video, I take no responsibility. And if you need financial advice, you should probably seek out somebody that is actually professionally trained in that field. If you decide you want to invest in crypto after watching this video, please do your own research. Curiosity is a powerful tool, and as far as I know, Google is still free. If you start to dig and you find things you don't understand, stick with it a bit. You are smarter than you think you are. So, with that out of the way, what the heck is Bitcoin anyway? Bitcoin is a cryptocurrency, the world's first cryptocurrency, and currently the most valuable. It's called a cryptocurrency because it's a currency that is secured by cryptography, both in the way that it's tracked and in the way that users can access it. Cryptocurrency. A lot of times people just call it crypto. Sorry, cryptographers. To really understand crypto, you need to understand just a few key concepts. And once you do, a lot of it starts to make a lot more sense. It may seem like a lot at first, but I'll walk you through it. And if any of this goes over your head or doesn't make sense on the first run, you can always watch the video again or leave a question in the comments. I believe this is really important stuff, and I'm more than happy to help you wherever I can. The big concepts are: 1, the double spending problem. 2, special ledgers called blockchains. 3, public-private key pairs. 4, mining and the cryptographic hash. And 5, how money works. Once you understand these 5 pillars, you're set. Ready? 1, the double spending problem. The double spending problem refers to a conundrum faced by anyone who's trying to make a digital currency. As an example, if I have $1 and I give that dollar to you, I no longer have $1. The dollar is now in your possession, and I do not have it anymore. Simple, right? It's not quite so simple with digital currency, because if instead of a physical dollar, I have a JPEG of $1, I could conceivably give you that without actually getting rid of the one I have. If I wanted to, I can spend it again, and again, and again, and again, and again. Hence, double spending. The reason this is a problem is because if I can infinitely duplicate my own money, and if everyone else can too, why would you want my money? Why would anyone trade money for goods and services? If the money can be infinitely reproduced by anyone at no cost, it doesn't really work as money, does it? Nevertheless, we use digital money for the most part, don't we? Every time you use your debit card, you're invoking a digital bank account. Every time you access your bank app to pay your bills, are you touching any physical dollars? No, it's all just data in a database somewhere, right? And yet, our money seems to maintain its value. There is no double spending. Why is that? That's because the bank prevents us from double spending. The idea being that there's a trusted third party with the authority to authorize whether or not a transaction is valid. If I want to send money to somebody, the bank's going to check my account to make sure I have that money, and then once I have sent that money, or spent it, they're going to make sure that those funds are deducted from my account. This solves the double spending problem, for the most part. It works. But there's a couple problems with this system. For one thing, I can only participate if the bank allows me to have an account. The bank charges a lot of fees, and they can freeze my accounts if they, or the government, decides they don't like the way I happen to tweet. Fair. More than that, banks have a lot of power because of this arrangement, and they tend to abuse that power, usually at the expense of small business owners and working class taxpayers, while they make out like bandits. These were some of the reasons given by Satoshi Nakamoto, the mythical creator of Bitcoin, when, in the wake of the 2008 financial crisis, he proposed a solution to the double spending problem that would not require a bank, government, or other trusted authority to secure and validate trust in a monetary system. Digital money without a bank? That's a real innovation. So how did he do it? He did it with a technology called blockchain. Part 2. Blockchain ledgers. When you send money digitally using your bank account, your bank updates your account in their ledger. It's a digital version of those 2-column accounting books. Ledgers keep track of who owns how much money at any given time. The simplest way to explain a blockchain ledger is that rather than having a centralized authority, like a bank, with all the power to determine the validity of digital money by tracking it within the ledger they control, what if you created a network of computers owned by anyone who wants to participate, and gave each of those computers a copy of the same ledger, and designed them to automatically update anytime someone sent or received money on everyone's computer simultaneously, so that everyone can see exactly how much money each account has, ensuring that no one can double spend? What if you decentralized the bank's ledger? Well, in order to do this, you'd need to have a network of computers connected to each other and all running the same computer program. The computer program that Satoshi Nakamoto created is called the Bitcoin protocol. And the network of computers that you get when more than one runs the Bitcoin protocol at the same time is called the Bitcoin network. This network tracks the movement of a special currency called Bitcoin. The Bitcoin protocol is the computer program. The Bitcoin network is the network of computers that runs the computer program. And Bitcoin is the currency that they track. Protocol, network, Bitcoin. Got it? Good. When the protocol runs, it automatically creates and shares a special ledger with all of the computers on the network. This ledger is called a blockchain. It's called a blockchain because transactions get added to this ledger in batches called blocks. And each block has a little bit of code that connects it to the previous block and the next block in an ongoing chain. A chain of blocks, a blockchain. You can think of these blocks as kind of like the ledger's pages. They have numbers, and you can refer to individual blocks to find out all the different transactions that occurred while that block was being mined. We're going to put a pin in mining for a second. First, you need to understand how transactions work, and more specifically, how public-private key pairs work. Section 3, public-private key pairs. To be clear, the word transaction refers to the act of moving money from one place within a ledger to somewhere else within a ledger. A purchase is a transaction. In traditional banking, these places within the ledger are referred to as bank accounts, and they belong to people who the bank has an account of. But in Bitcoin and other cryptocurrencies, there is no bank, and there is nobody maintaining accounts on anyone else's behalf. There are no bank accounts. So how does it work? Well, there is something akin to a bank account, and it's called a blockchain address. If you own Bitcoin, you don't actually hold it, and nobody holds it on your behalf. Rather, to own it is to own a password that allows you to tell the network to move Bitcoin from one place in the blockchain to another place in the blockchain. You don't own the coins, you own the magic word that allows you to move them. This password is called a private key. Nobody signs you up, nobody gives you permission, you never create an account. You either own a software-generated private key, or you don't. A very popular saying in the cryptocurrency community is, not your keys, not your Bitcoin. Because if you don't own a private key, even if you buy Bitcoin, you don't own it in a way that matters. You can't do anything with Bitcoin without access to its corresponding private key. In addition to private keys, there are also public keys. Public keys allow you to tell the network where you want Bitcoin to go. If private keys tell you where it's coming from, public keys tell you where it's going. If you want to send your friend some Bitcoin, for that favor, you need to have your own private key to unlock your Bitcoin address, and you need to have your friend's public key so the network knows where to send it. This is a public-private key pair, and these are managed by wallet apps, software applications that make it easier for people to send and receive crypto. To get a public-private key pair, you just download a wallet app, and the software will generate a private key for you to access an address, and a public key to provide other people to send money to your address. Very easy. It can be hard to visualize this whole process because there is no coin. Bitcoin only exists as data, as numbers in a ledger managed by a computer network. And that data is designed to only be changeable if the network is provided with a valid public-private key pair. Wallets can be a bit of a tricky metaphor too. Like, I understand why they're called wallets. They feel like wallets. You open a wallet app and it tells you how much crypto you have, and it's how you send and receive crypto. But functionally, technically, all these applications are doing is managing your public and private keys. I think key ring is a bit more accurate. Your Bitcoin's not in your wallet, it's in a ledger, a blockchain. The wallet simply provides you with the tools to move it around in that blockchain. Takes some getting used to. I kind of like to think of the whole thing as visiting a gigantic automated post office. You walk in and you have your key that unlocks your P.O. box, and then you can point to somebody else's P.O. box number and tell the robots that manage this post office that you want to move your mail over there. In this metaphor, your key is your private key. Your friend's P.O. box number is their public key. The mail is the Bitcoin, and the robots behind the boxes are the Bitcoin network. I'm doing my best here. I hope that helps. As a user, you'll experience this whole process through a wallet app, which looks and feels an awful lot like a bank app. Your blockchain address is a bit like a bank account number. It's not a bank account, it's not a bank account number, but it's similar enough that if you can use one, you can probably use the other. Now, I would be a bad person if I didn't emphasize right now, not your keys, not your crypto. Since there are no banks, there's no nanny to appeal to when things go wrong. The cryptography behind a private key is so complex that you are statistically more likely to be able to pluck a single specific atom from the known universe than you are to be able to guess your own private key. Now, while this makes your cryptocurrency remarkably safe, assuming you keep your key intact, if you lose it, or if someone steals it, it can be next to impossible to get that money back. If you send Bitcoin to the wrong address, like if you copy and paste your friend's public key and accidentally add a character or something, it's most likely gone forever. I don't mean to scare you away from cryptocurrency. I just want to emphasize that when you go down this path, you are making a decision to take your security into your own hands, making your security your responsibility, perhaps for the first time in your life. That's a big deal. You may want to start small. Don't be a fool. Don't brag about how much cryptocurrency you have on social media, unless you want to have a giant target on you. Don't tell your private key to friends or family, anyone really. Make sure that you always have your private key backed up in some way. Understand seed phrases, how they work. Don't leave access to your wallet just lying around. Learn the difference between hot wallets, like MetaMask or Mycelium, and cold storage wallets, like Trezor or the Ledger. Make sure to do your own security research so that you can set up protections that are best suited to you, your competence, your understanding. The last thing you want to do is make things too secure and then you forget your own keys. Also a problem. And always follow the best practices of whatever wallet you happen to be using. You will most likely find yourself using more than one as you play in this space. There's a lot of great stuff about crypto, a lot to be excited about, and honestly, a lot of fun to be had. But it's very, very powerful. And I would like you to treat your keys with the same kind of respect that you would treat a gun, because they can both mess your life up if you use them wrong. Now, at this point, you probably have enough knowledge to participate in the crypto economy. Exciting. If you sign up for an account with a cryptocurrency exchange such as Coinbase or Binance, or use an app like PayPal or Cash App, you can, right now, using your existing bank account, purchase cryptocurrencies like Bitcoin, Ethereum, or hundreds more. Most of these platforms have built-in wallets. Some of them don't, and I would advise you not to use those. Robinhood. And more merchants are coming to accept cryptocurrency every day. For instance, my other business, Dan Cakes. And that's really all it takes to get started. Now, don't be psyched out by Bitcoin's massive price tag. One thing that a lot of people new to the space don't realize is that a single Bitcoin, because it's digital, can be divided to 8 decimal points. And that means that if you only have 20, 10, 5, $1 to spend on Bitcoin, you can get Bitcoin. I think as of right now, you can still get over 1,000 SATOSHIs, which are the smallest unit of Bitcoin, for a single dollar. That won't always be the case. Get it while it's hot. But it's still kind of a mystery, right? What's the network actually doing? And where do Bitcoins come from? And why do I keep hearing that it burns as much energy as Argentina? The answer to all 3 of these questions is mining. When you send a transaction to the Bitcoin network, like if someone buys a limited edition, one-of-a-kind preserved pancake from Dan Cakes and uses cryptocurrency to pay for it, that transaction doesn't show up alone. It would be really inefficient for the network to only process one transaction at a time, so instead, all of the transactions that happen at the same time, including that pancake one, get bundled together and put into a sort of waiting room called a mempool. Once there's enough transaction data in the mempool to fill a block, which caps out at about 1 megabyte or roughly 2,700 transactions, give or take, that bundle of transaction data gets tossed through a very precise wood chipper, mangled into unrecognizable static, and then sent to the network, where now all of the participating mining nodes must compete to figure out what the heck it looked like. That sounds insane, right? Like, what? But hang on, it'll make sense in just a minute. The wood chipper metaphor I am borrowing from my good friend Dr. Z-Teng Wang, who uses it to help people understand what a hashing algorithm is. Quote, "A hashing algorithm is a complicated bundle of math which functions like an extremely precise wood chipper. If you feed something in, it takes your input and shreds it into a string of digital static called a hash. If you feed exactly the same thing in, you'll always get exactly the same string out. If you change the input even a tiny bit, the hash that comes out will be completely different. And although it's easy to shove an input in and get a hash, it's impossible to take a hash out and use it to reconstruct the original input." End quote. Because of the asymmetrical nature of the hashing algorithm, you can't take that hash and shove it back through the wood chipper and figure out what it looked like. So instead, the computers on the network have to use the brute force method, coming up with billions of possible solutions per second until by pure probability, one of the computers on the network manages to author a block that creates the same hash when put through that wood chipper. The first computer to successfully solve the hash sends its solution to all the other computers on the network, who can then run it through the algorithm and see that yes, this is correct. It creates the same static. At which point they stop trying to solve the old problem and move on to minting the next block. The computer that wins this contest gets to sign the block and is rewarded with access to a fresh, blockchain address that contains a small amount of Bitcoin. This is where Bitcoin comes from. This whole process is called mining. It happens at roughly 10-minute intervals no matter how many transactions are submitted to the network, and it consumes an enormous amount of power. Each mining node is meant to burn about as much energy as it possibly can in order to try and win this Bitcoin reward. The larger the network grows, the more difficult this hashing problem becomes to solve, so that over time it becomes harder and harder for small computers like laptops to participate, and it takes more and more energy to add blocks to the blockchain. And the longer the network lives, the smaller the Bitcoin reward becomes, until the network has issued 21 million total coins, at which point it will stop making new ones. But that won't happen until like 2142, it's like 100 years away. You may be asking yourself, why the hell does it have to be so complicated? Wouldn't it be easier to just not shred the transaction data into meaningless static before you put it onto the ledger? Like, why you gotta do that? Which is a very, very good question, and it has a very good answer. The purpose of the mining process is incentive. To incentivize participation, the protocol rewards miners for putting their computer on the network, and they stand to win more Bitcoin the sooner they get involved. At the same time, the protocol disincentivizes dishonest behavior by making it so expensive to participate. In any system that hopes to manage money, you are going to have bad actors because by default, because you're dealing with money, there is already a baked-in incentive to cheat, to double spend and get free Bitcoin. But if somebody can double spend, nobody will ever trust the currency and the whole experiment fails. So then how do you convince people not to cheat without relying on a bank or a government to force them not to cheat? Well, you make it really, really expensive to do it. So expensive that it's not even worth it. While it is theoretically possible to double spend Bitcoin, in order to do it, you would need to be able to control more than 51% of the hashing power of the network at once. That's how much power you'd need to be able to alter the contents of a block so you can convince the network to reallocate Bitcoin you've already spent and let you double spend it. That 51% number works because the protocol is designed to accept as valid whatever a simple majority of the mining nodes provide as valid. So if 51% of the mining nodes say this block is valid, the rest of them will be forced to accept it. But that means you'd need to control a huge amount of energy resources to pull that off. And at the end of it, you'd really only be able to double spend for as long as you can hold that control. Bitcoin is said to consume roughly the same amount of energy as a small country. Most people don't have access to those kinds of resources. And furthermore, if you succeeded in cheating this system, in scamming yourself some extra Bitcoin by convincing the network to double it for you, you would shatter the faith that everybody else has in the integrity of the network and immediately devalue all the Bitcoin you just stole. If the network loses its integrity, the currency loses its value because its value is based on the integrity of the network. The only reason people are willing to pay as much as they are for Bitcoin is because they think it works. And if you prove it doesn't work by double spending it, it just kind of defeats the purpose, right? If you've got that much access to energy, you may as well just run a legitimate node because your chances of winning Bitcoin in a legitimate way are gonna be a lot higher than everyone else's. Why not just participate and use your massive energy resources to get yourself some Bitcoin? That is how Satoshi Nakamoto solved the double spending problem. That is why the Bitcoin network consumes so much energy, and that is exactly why it has become as powerful as it is. Money without banks, rules without rulers. A genius implementation of game theory, and a true technological marvel. But there's one more thing we need to explore before you'll really grasp the significance of this technology. Section 5. How money works. Even now, you may be wondering why Bitcoin has value. I know I did. You can explain to me all the technicals, all the specifics, how all the mining and everything works, and still I had that nagging itch, that sense of like, okay, but why are people willing to buy it for $60,000? What's it tied to? What backs it? How does it have value? It really messed with me for a minute. It really kind of forces you to think about money. Because in order to understand why Bitcoin has managed to gain so much value, you kind of need something to compare it to. And we never really think about why old money has value. Why does the US dollar have value, for instance? Now people will say something like, oh, it's tied to gold, but it's not. We've been divorced from the gold standard for some time now. Well, and people can say because everybody believes in it, which is only half true. It doesn't tell you why we believe in it. All it says is that we do. So the next question is, why do we believe in it? We believe in it for a reason. Most people are not very conscious of what that reason is because you don't have to be. All you need to know is that it works and then the economy works. If everybody agrees that the money has value, commerce can exist. But now Bitcoin kind of forces us to analyze where the belief in our monetary system comes from. And the answer? Violence. Since the dawn of currency, long before modern nations, the value of state-issued tokens has been derived from the relationship of violence that exists when states tax their citizens in order to raise standing armies. Writes the legendary anthropologist David Graeber in his book, Debt, the First 5,000 Years, quote, say a king wishes to support a standing army of 50,000 men. Under ancient or medieval conditions, feeding such a force was an enormous problem. Unless they were on the march, one would need to employ almost as many men and animals just to locate, acquire, and transport the necessary provisions. On the other hand, if one simply hands out coins to the soldiers and then demands that every family in the kingdom was obliged to pay one of those coins back to you, one would, in one blow, turn one's entire national economy into a vast machine for the provisioning of soldiers, since now every family, in order to get their hands on the coins, must find some way to contribute to the general effort to provide soldiers with things they want. Markets are brought into existence as a side effect. Markets are brought into existence as a side effect. There is a pervasive myth that currency was invented to solve the problems of barter economies. This myth was first presented by Adam Smith in his seminal work of economics, The Wealth of Nations. But Smith kind of pulled it out of his ass, and Graeber spends a considerable portion of Debt absolutely debunking the hell out of this myth. There is no anthropological or historical evidence to suggest that there ever existed a society that bartered in the cartoonish way this myth presupposes. The run around and get me exactly how many chickens I need for this cow game simply was not played. Instead, people used favor and gift economies. You have to imagine people were living in close proximity to each other for long periods of time. You lived in a farming community, you knew each other, you gathered for festivals. If somebody came to your house and asked you for something, you would probably just give it to them and then know that they owed you one. And they'd owe you a bigger one depending upon the favor you did for them. It's very intuitive. It's the way you would behave with a family member. It's not this Ed, Edd and Eddy cartoonish nonsense where you have to run around the cul-de-sac getting exactly what everybody needs so you can get a damn jawbreaker.
You must trade for the egg, Greasy Ed Boy.
Trade? That kind of bartering never existed in that way. There is more nuance to it than this, which I don't have time to get into here, but the point is that currency was not invented to solve the problems of barter. The truth is, currency was invented to solve the problem of how do I convince all these people to feed my army? And you know how you do it? You threaten them with violence if they don't participate. And you give them tokens that they can present to you to prove they participated. You tax them in that token. And if they don't pay their taxes, you punish them. Markets come into existence as a side effect, because once the consequences for not paying your taxes are established, everyone starts to want the token and starts to come up with increasingly creative ways for how they can get the token. Where once was a dead piece of metal that nobody particularly cared about because you could not eat it, now were gold and silver and copper coins that represented freedom from violence. Society underwent a surge in specialization as things like art and music and acting and engineering and bureaucracy and philosophy suddenly became valid ways to get coins. Everyone wants the money the king issues, however they can get it. Because if they have it, they can pay off their debts to the kingdom and keep their remaining freedom intact. That is, more or less, how money works. The value of state-issued currency is directly tied to the willingness and capacity of that state to do harm to and take the freedom of those who cannot pay their debts to that state, which is to say, poor people and poor countries. Our money literally would not work if being poor did not bring you closer to the threat of violence. If you take that threat away, the value of the currency collapses. This is the reason why the currency of failed states tends to lose its value so dramatically. Because it has no value if there's not a big bully walking around and imposing that value on everyone with a clenched fist and an empty jail cell. This is the reason why people kinda stopped using gold for a while after the fall of the Roman Empire. There's no bully. Nobody cares about the tokens of a weak government. And this legacy of violence has been the foundational component of our civilization for as long as we've had civilization. It's the frickin' operating system. The violence of money incentivizes further violence, because if you know violence will be done to you if you don't have enough of this token.
Come and see the violence inherent in the system! Help, help, I'm being repressed, bloody peasant! Oh!
You're going to be more willing to do violence to other people in order to get it. And since the more money you have, the more access to violence you have, this way of doing things sort of incentivizes the least empathetic and most sociopathic people into positions of extraordinary power and dominance. It's just physics, and we've never been able to do anything about it. It has quite literally just been how the world works. But hang on. Bitcoin isn't issued by a state. It's issued by a computer program. And in order for that computer program to work, people have to participate in it. And in order to participate in it, there has to be an incentive to do so, because the participation burns a lot of energy on these mining computers. And with old money, the incentive is the violence. Use this money or get hurt. So what's Bitcoin's incentive? Is there a government that takes their tax money in it and will hurt you if you don't pay your taxes in Bitcoin? No, I don't think so. Many governments really would wish you didn't use it at all because they can't control the supply of it. So then what is the incentive? Well, if you put your computer on the Bitcoin network as a mining node, you could potentially win some Bitcoin. Now, that Bitcoin might not be worth almost anything at first, but it might be worth something someday. It might be worth a lot. And if it is, it will retroactively have been worth it to put forward the energy and the resources now so that you can be in possession of some Bitcoin later on when it's more valuable. Well, why would someone think that it could become valuable? Well, it removes the need for banks, reduces transaction fees, it's permissionless, borderless, works anywhere on the planet. It allows for a broader participation in a digital economy. The only gate to access is just having a phone with the software. And the hard cap on 21 million Bitcoin means that mathematically, it's a deflationary currency. No government can print more Bitcoin. 21 million is the only amount that will ever exist. So if it does become more widely adopted, those individual Bitcoins will likely gain value over time as they become more scarce. It's issued according to the rules of a computer program, an open source computer program that anybody can look at and see and validate whether or not they feel they can trust it. It isn't contingent on an election. It isn't contingent on the will of a righteous king. It is math. Math that functions based on the laws of our universe. It is a well-engineered monetary system. And we've never had a monetary system that was engineered. It is a true innovation. When you put it like that, it doesn't seem that crazy to think it could be worth something someday. What I believe we're looking at here is a revolution on a scale that we've never seen before. And it's so profound that most of us can't even see what's happening. All currency, up until this point, has required violence on a primordial level in order for so-called peaceful, free market relations to even be possible. If the violence stopped, the market would cease functioning. 11 aircraft carriers are policing the world's oceans on behalf of the United States government's need to enforce the value of their dollar, lest our business interests collapse. But here in front of us, with Bitcoin and cryptocurrency, we have a technology that is issuing and regulating tokens of value independent of any state or their military might. If the United States government collapsed tomorrow, or Russia, or China, or India, or Nigeria, Bitcoin would not necessarily lose any value, even as those national currencies probably would. In fact, as these national currencies inflate into nothingness, which they are always doing at slower or faster rates because that's just what governments do is they print money, Bitcoin might appear to gain value at an extraordinary rate. You might one day wake up to find that a frickin' cheeseburger costs $60,000, but Bitcoin's trading at 60 million or 60 billion or 60 trillion. Like, the number, the denomination in USD is kind of meaningless at that point because those currencies can be inflated infinitely. So if that happens, Bitcoin will skyrocket in value when compared to that currency. And in addition to the fact that denominating Bitcoin in an inflationary currency is increasingly cartoonish and pointless, as that happens, more and more people will be looking to put their value in a stable asset like Bitcoin, causing demand to skyrocket, supply to plummet, and the price of Bitcoin to go to the moon. Currency crises have happened before, many times to many innocent people who did not think that it would happen to them. There's no reason it can't happen to you. The value of Bitcoin is derived not from violence, but from the perceived integrity of the network and computer program that issues and manages it. Nothing like this has ever been possible before. The longer this network endures without suffering a fatal flaw, the more people will come to see it as valuable. The primordial value of the token is derived from the faith that the first miners had in its eventual value. Without that faith, they'd have had no incentive to participate, and the Bitcoin network would not have come into existence. But they had that faith, and so it did come into existence. And as the network grows, it becomes more secure, more accessible, and more capable of handling more of the world's value. This, in turn, causes more people to believe in it, creating a feedback loop in which its success is increasingly guaranteed by its participants. The more trust in the network, the more valuable the token becomes. The more people become interested in the token, the more people contribute to and add to the size of the network, which increases the security of the network, which increases the amount of trust people put in the network, which increases the value of the token. It disincentivizes bad actors from destabilizing the network by making it pointless to try to. And it incentivizes community participation around a shared vision of what the network might one day become. The value of legacy currency is forced upon us. The value of cryptocurrency is an emergent phenomenon. It's a pretty significant difference, if you ask me. Will it solve all of our problems? No, not by a long shot. But it does give us a tool with which we might begin to address some of the deepest and oldest ones. No longer is state violence a necessary component of markets. With cryptocurrency, we can create new markets based on a shared understanding of what the world could be. And maybe the energy cost of these networks seems enormous when you look at them in a vacuum, but when you compare them to the system of banking and lending, the system of fiat currency and debt-based economics, when you compare them to the cost of a cartoonishly bloated military budget and 11 aircraft carriers policing the world's oceans with nuclear reactors and nuclear weapons ready to attack at a moment's notice, and the human cost that necessarily implies, when you compare them to the costs of inflation, which perpetually devalues the money in everyone's pocket, everyone's retirement account, and every corporation's treasury, baking in an incentive for them to be more willing to lobby governments to deregulate their right to destroy the environment in pursuit of profit so they can maybe break even. When you compare them against a system that simply would not function were it not for the most powerful entities on Earth being willing and able to do harm to the poorest people on Earth, the energy cost seems worth it. Cryptocurrency provides the brightest lifeline towards a better future that I've ever seen. When you choose to participate in the crypto economy, you are withholding the food that the violence and oppression of the old system requires to function. You're opting out of a future of dystopian bleakness and opting into one that provides us with new possibilities. They may not all be perfect possibilities. There will be problems, there will be scams, there will be struggles. But at least it paints for us a picture of something different than what we've been shackled to so far. Exiting legacy finance means protecting yourself, your wealth, and the wealth and safety of your children and communities. It is the most powerful form of activism currently available to any individual person because it is the only form of activism that wrests control of money from the people who are most corrupted by it, and all the incentives align. Cryptocurrency just makes sense. The only missing piece is education, and yours has just begun. Thank you so much for watching this video. I know it was a bit of a long one. I hope you got a lot of information out of it, and I hope you feel more empowered to play around in this space going forward. There's a ton of valuable information out there about cryptocurrency, whether you want to learn it for investing purposes, activist purposes, philosophical reasons, what have you. I've got a couple of my favorite creators and talks that I'm going to link to in the description down below. So if you're looking for a little bit more info, please scroll down there, check that out. Again, if you liked this video, please like it, subscribe to the channel, share it with friends, anybody that you think might get something out of it. Would help me out a lot, actually. If you have any other questions you want to ask me, please ask in the comments. I'm all about it. It'll help me figure out how I can make videos better in the future, what people were confused on, anything I spoke too fast, what have you. I want to know your thoughts, and if there's anything I can do to help you understand something in the comments, I will reply there. I'm pretty loquacious, so. And if you feel like it, please check us out on Patreon, patreon.com/anthromancy. If you want to see your name in the credits, want to get shouted out, want to be a part of this project long term, I would love to have you. You know, all the stuff's there. I'm not going to waste your time talking about that. You want to check it out? Check it out. Patreon.com/anthromancy. There is still time to order your own copy of the Anthromancer board game. If you see this board here, these fancy cards I got over here, it is a board game / spiritual experience. Ties into this whole crazy cryptocurrency, magic, mysticism brand I'm going for. And at anthromancer.com, you can put in a pre-order for it. We're going to be submitting our files to the manufacturer in just about a week or two. So I'm very excited about that. It's been 6 years coming. Big deal to me. And finally, if you want to follow my crazy ass on Twitter for whatever reason, you can do so at Daniel J. Drake. It's a great way to engage with me, interact. I try to be pretty responsive on there, so hopefully we'll be friends or nemesis or whatever. Anyway, as always, have a wonderful day, and remember, be moving.